Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
A few years ago, my ex and I lived with my mom. Directly next door to my mom lived a kindly old lady and her great-grandson, about 15. We will call him Caleb. We shared a backyard. According to relatives and other neighbors, this kid was trouble. Once Caleb took a pack of cigarettes from our vehicle, no idea how, as we kept it locked, and shot them up with a BB gun, leaving the mess right in our driveway. The list of jerk moves he pulled goes on, but that's not why I'm telling this tale. He had this bike he rode all day, every chance he could, up and down the street with some other boys. On more than one occasion, he left his bike in our driveway behind our vehicles. Each time we put it in his yard, out of harm's way. Well, one day the bike goes missing. We have no idea how or why, but Caleb thought we took it, I suppose. One day, my ex was taking the dog outside to use a bathroom, and she ran into Caleb's side of the yard and into the bushes. Before my ex could get over there, the dog was mysteriously gone. We spent hours looking for this dog. While we were doing this, we saw Caleb outside with his friends laughing about something and staring at us. Ex and I go over to ask if they have seen the dog, and they say no, but offered to look with us. They were looking, but not really looking. It was all really fishy. When we parted ways, they sarcastically said, "Good luck finding your dog," and they laughed. Days went by, we thought she was dead. But after a while, one of the kids from Caleb's group of friends brings the dog to Caleb's great-grandmother's house. The dog is back, yay! We pretty much figured Caleb took her because of the searching incident, and the fact that every time the dog saw Caleb, she would howl and run inside. The poor thing was traumatized and was in the same for months. Even if he didn't take her, he was a jerk in many other ways and deserved what he got. While all this was going on, the bike was in our yard again, right behind the car. I guess Caleb got it back. One night, Ex and I decided we'd had enough, and Caleb needed to pay for hurting our dog. Armed with the biggest knives we had, along with some spray paint, we doctored up the bike, slashed the tires, spray painted it pink, and scratched dog napper into the metal. We went far into the woods behind an abandoned house on our street and tossed the bike into a giant thorn bush. And Caleb did not mess with us again. Edit. To clear some things up, we didn't do anything directly to him because Ex and I were weenies and feared the law. Caleb was 15, we were 18 and 19. We feel bike revenge was the best way to go because he loved that bike. He doesn't live next door anymore. And the story took place in late 2011. My revenge came in two parts, one pity and one pro. The backstory. When I was 19 or 20, I'm 25 now, I met a guy on Tinder, let's call him Brad. Brad and I didn't get off to a great start, but I had no idea how bad it was going to get. At first, it just seemed we were incompatible, as he was pushy and rude and I take no nonsense. If it had stopped there, I wouldn't be here right now, but it didn't stop there. Once I made it clear that I found Brad repulsive and wanted nothing to do with him. And his messages took a turn. He threatened to stalk, kidnap, and murder me. He also managed to find my home address, 3 hours away from the city we were in, and threatened to come find me. As a side note, it was my dad's house and some small part of me wanted to see exactly how badly it would turn out for him if he showed up there. Of course, I warned my dad and gave him a picture of the guy. I also took screenshots of everything he sent me. The pity. Being a young woman with no idea whether this madman would actually go to lengths to find me, I called the cops. When they came, they looked at the message, and they told me it constituted a terrorist threat, but also told me there wasn't much they could do unless Brad actually showed up. They did take down his details, including where he worked, which is listed in his bio. This will be important later. From what I understand, the cops went to Brad's workplace to speak to him and he refused. So they left. Nothing ever came out of it. For the second part of the pity, I found his Facebook. Do not put your freaking workplace on all of your social media. I snooped around and managed to find a couple of his family members. I sent him all screenshots along with an explanation of what happened. I didn't hear back for a few days, but when I did was from Brad's mom. She apologized profusely on behalf of her son and told me they were driving in from Brad's hometown 3 states away to confront him. She asked me not to warn him of this in advance, and obviously, I agreed. I don't know what became of this, but I hope he got a good Southern-style butt whooping. Now for the pro. A few years later, when Brad probably thought he was in the clear, something jogged my memory of what he did, and I decided it was time for him to face some actual consequences. I made a Facebook post including his picture and bio, all of the screenshots, and a message warning people in our area and asking them to share it around so other women would know what they were dealing with. 2 days later, Facebook took it down, but the damage had already been done. 3K shares and many messages later, all of that information had made its way to his company's Facebook page. From what I understand, they were absolutely flooded with messages about Brad and his behavior. They responded with a stock message about how they were dealing with it according to their policies. This was disheartening, as I assumed they were just going to blow it off. By this point, Brad had been working for them for at least 4 years. However, I soon learned this was not the case. Several women from his company messaged me to thank me for coming forward and exposing the kind of person they were working with. It was through one of these women that I found out what happened to good old Brad. He was called into a meeting with his boss, HR, and the CEO of the company. As a side note, this is a multinational company and the CEO is a woman. They did not take the situation lightly. Within 2 days of posting on Facebook, Brad had been fired and escorted off the premises by armed security. In the end, Brad got what he deserved and now he has a massive blank spot on his resume. As this company was his first job out of college and he can no longer get a letter of recommendation from them. As far as what became of him, I don't know. I never heard from him again. Though I did get a message from his grandma telling me that what I was doing was illegal. Yeah, right. This happened a year ago. I was eating french fries and sausages outside a store. I was waiting for my mother and sister outside a woman's clothes store and I sat in the shade, relaxed, and put on my noise-cancelling headphones and listened to my audiobook. A woman with a German Shepherd puppy approached me and asked me if I could watch her puppy while she bought something at the pharmacy that was behind me. I told her yes, and a couple of minutes later she came back and left with her puppy. A moment later, an elderly woman who was carrying a large adult pit bull stood next to my seat while talking on her phone. I was full into the history of quotes, so I didn't notice anything beside the dog greedily watched my food, so I gave him some pieces of sausages. After a while, I realized that the woman had disappeared. I checked the dog's color and saw that her name was Chocolilo, something like a small corn in Spanish. I stayed next to the dog petting it since it was one of that kind of huge dogs that only demanded affection. A moment later, my mother left the store and I told her that a woman had left him next to me. The dog almost knocked her down because he gave her a headbutt demanding to get petted. A moment later, the old woman came out of the store and began to thank me for taking care of her baby and how grateful she was that the store had people to take care of the dogs. Well, because she was in a hurry but also couldn't let her poor baby alone. It was at that moment that I realized that the woman thought I was a worker in charge of keeping an eye on customers' dogs. When I explained the misunderstanding, the woman turned pale with terror and began to thank me and apologizing. She was horrified that because of her carelessness, someone could have kidnapped her poor baby and used it for dogfights. My family love animals, so we understand her fear. My mother and the old woman stayed talking for a while about their furry babies until my sister came back and we said goodbye. It is not a typical I don't work here lady story, but remembering the worried face of this old woman towards her enormous 40 kilograms furry baby always gives me a smile. Even more because pit bulls tend to be taken as a dangerous breed, but for this lady, he was just her baby. That may sound really cruel, but please bear in mind that I'm a huge dog lover. This should go to show how bad the situation was. The incident happened when I was 8 and my brother was 6. Since we were young, our mom was required to pick us up at the bus stop and she was waiting for us to arrive. My neighborhood is a gated community, but it's so active that you don't really notice. If you go outside, you will see at least 5 people running, biking, or walking their dogs in front of your house at any given moment. And the woman on the opposite end of the road was walking with her 2 dogs, as one does. My mom is minding her own business at the curb and I'm still on the bus a couple of blocks away. One of the dogs takes a crap on the edge of the forest that bordered the other side of the road. Pretty normal. For whatever reason, most dogs in our neighborhood like to crap here. The woman took out a bag and bent down to pick it up. In doing so, she dropped both leashes on the ground. Immediately, the 2 dogs charged at my mother. She was able to fight back enough to deter them, but they still managed to tear open her thigh. The woman runs over and apologizes. My mother asks for the woman's name and address, and the woman gives her the information. Then she just up and leaves, without offering medical help or even suggesting it. My mom then stands there for several minutes with her thigh gushing blood, until me and my brother get home. If there wasn't a parent present, the bus couldn't drop us off. I straight up screamed at the sight of the wound, and my mom explained what had happened before calling 911. She left me to take care of my brother, though I had never spent more than 15 minutes at home by myself. My dad was busy advising CEOs in the next county over, so it wasn't like she could just wait for him to come home. My brother couldn't understand how a dog could hurt someone, since we had a dog who was more of a giant teddy bear than anything else. I don't remember much of what I was thinking, but I'm sure I was terrified and angry. Flash forward a few days, my mom gets surgery along with the usual rabies shot and whatnot. She's at home now but can't walk properly. Then the police came. My mom informed me that the woman had given a non-existent address and a false name as well. Since we were in a gated community, it was easy enough for the police to see if she lived here, and the name was nowhere to be found. However, there have been 2 other similar dog attacks within the past few years, and both had taken place on a road adjacent to ours. My mom contacted one of these victims who was actually the mother of a boy in my class. They swapped descriptions and found that they matched perfectly. Despite all of this, my mother decided not to further investigate since she hates legal conflicts more than anything else. I am not my mother though. It turned out that my mom had learned of this woman being attacked through a mutual friend about 4 years prior. My mom never let me bike down that road despite me having free range of the rest of the neighborhood. I always asked why, but she never answered. Now I understand, and I decided to go down that road anyway. At the time, I was a Girl Scout and it was cookie selling time. The neighbors were used to having me and other girls ring their bell to see if they wanted anything. I put on the uniform and told my mom that I was going to collect the checks. She didn't question it. I walked down to that road, which was a dead-end court. From here, I wasn't sure what to do because I was scared that I would accidentally knock on the woman's door and would question her without realizing who it was until it was too late. I tried listening for the sound of dogs barking, but the only bark I heard sounded like it came from a tiny yappy dog, not a Labrador or a pit bull as my dog had said they were. So I stupidly decided to take my chances with the neighbors. I would ask him if anyone on this road owned a pit bull and a brown Labrador. If they asked why I wanted to know, I'd say that I needed to collect a cookie check from that house. In actuality, my plan was to sell cookies to that house so that the woman would have to write her name on the list. The first few people had no idea. The third, however, pointed me to a house. I thanked him and double-checked with 2 more neighbors just to be sure he wasn't mistaken. Luckily, I wasn't kidnapped by these people or anything like that, but this barely concerned me at the time. If I'd been much older, no doubt someone would have reported me for suspicious behavior. Luckily, at this point, I was still an adorable little girl, and I was fully aware that people wouldn't pay much notice due to my age. I knew I had to use that to my advantage even then. The Girl Scout uniform didn't hurt either. Then I whipped out my iPod Touch. Remember when those were a thing? And I took a picture of both license plates and a house, hoping nobody saw. I knocked on a door. A dark-skinned teenage girl opened it. Definitely not the white middle-aged woman my mom had described. But then two donks came running to the door with bright eyes, tail waging like they just wanted to play and cuddle with a new stranger. They fit the pre-descriptions. So I assumed that this girl was a woman's daughter or something. I asked her if she wanted to buy Girl Scout cookies to get her surname, and she politely declined before closing the door. That was okay. I'd seen enough. I sprinted back home as fast as I could and proudly showed my mom the pictures I'd taken. She explored. I spent the next 10 minutes getting screamed at about how I could have been killed. And if I was wrong, I might be committing a misdemeanor by taking those pictures like a stalker. In hindsight, I understand why she felt that way, but at that moment I was angry. As far as I could tell, I collected indisputable proof of this woman's residency, and it was being dismissed for no reason at all. She asked me if I'd seen the woman herself, and I told her no. Just a teenage girl. She asked me if I had photo evidence of the dogs. I didn't, but I told her that I'd seen them. I told my mom to give the photos to the police, and she said no. I was baffled, and she told me that there wasn't as much evidence as I thought, just because the house had two dogs. She asked me how I'd feel if my dog was wrongly accused and taken away to be euthanized. I replied that I would be upset, and she said the girl and her family would feel that way if I was wrong. I retorted that I'd rather blame the wrong dogs and risk letting the real culprits go unpunished. This got her so angry. It was a pretty clear indication of how messed up my psyche was at this moment, since I believe that as an 8-year-old I didn't pick up on why she was so concerned by this statement aside from the obvious implications. When I saw that I couldn't convince her, I threatened to call the police to show them myself so they could ID her. This got her attention. Since I was young, I didn't know any other ways to contact law enforcement, and certainly not about evidence from after the crime, and I guess my mom was afraid that our family could get fined if I made the call. I then reminded her that multiple people had been attacked by those dogs, and she finally relented. I am not sure what happened directly after that, but she definitely filed a report. She didn't tell me the specifics of what happened after that, just that the dogs had been taken by the county. A year later, a new family had moved into that house. Years later, my mom said that she admired my determination and sense of right and wrong during this incident, even if she disagreed with the dishonest actions I took to get these results. Some of the narration will be inaccurate since it happened so long ago, but this is what I remember thinking.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.